But for now, I wanted to bring in some technology providers who enable global e-commerce and digital trade, and grateful to be joined by Arun Venkataraman, who's the Senior Director for Global Government Engagement for Visa, Eric Reddig, who's the Senior Manager for Policy and Regulatory Affairs for Intuit, and Maria Luisa Boyce, who's the Vice President for Global Public Affairs at UPS. So for the three of you, you all provide digital tools that are enabling e-commerce. And so wanted to see if you could each maybe just provide a brief intervention about how you look at the role of digital tools in enabling small businesses in the global marketplace. And are there lessons to be learned from COVID-19 that government should take into account when designing global e-commerce and digital trade policies and programs? So Arun, wanted to start with you. Please just make sure, you've got your microphone on and camera on already. Over to you.
Great, thanks, Jake. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Arun Venkataraman, and I lead international economic policy at Visa. And it's been incredibly inspiring to hear from our guests that were the small businesses to see how they've been able to use digital tools to not just survive during this crisis and pandemic, but to thrive and to really, with friends like these, this is how we are going to get out to the other side. And so really kudos to them for their success, and thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you also to Jake and Jamaica at the Global Innovation Forum, and to our friends at SBA and ITA, who of course are critical partners for these and other small businesses, and for us as well as we work with small businesses here and throughout the world. Visa is a company that's been around for a long time, and we've always understood just how critical small businesses are to local economies. And so we have a long history of focusing on solutions geared towards small businesses. But over time, what has happened is we've shifted that focus to really building products and services that connect small businesses to global consumers through e-commerce. Now, of course, we've been doing this before, but with the dramatic shifts in consumption patterns away from in-person purchases during this COVID-19 crisis, what was once a question of maybe strategy for small and medium-sized enterprises to go online has really become a necessity. And simply put, to state the obvious, to stay afloat and relevant and resilient during this period, small businesses need to get online and get online fast. And our guests today are already leading the way and have already been doing that. What we have done at Visa is really taken on as a responsibility and as a commitment to help digitally enable 50 million small businesses over the next 3 years, because that is what we need to rapidly get these businesses into an online environment. Again, not just for COVID, but to really help them succeed for the long term. And because digital payments are the bedrock of online commerce, Visa is uniquely placed to provide the necessary tools to help these small businesses get online and build an online presence. One way we're doing this is to help get to our commitment to reach those 50 million SMEs. We've launched a number of Visa small business hubs. And these small business hubs are now live in more than 20 countries and are really tailored to each region's unique SME needs as we've understood them from some of our partners. And particularly in the US, we think they serve as a nice complement and a nice online complement to the SBA Small Business Development Centers and of course the ITA's Export Assistance Centers, which already do so much great work as we've already heard. What we hope to do with our small business hubs is really deliver a broad range of tools and special partner offers and actionable tips that business owners can actually implement easily to help build that robust online presence. One of the tools we offer to really make this happen is a solution we call Authorize.net, which is a single integration that really brings together and makes it possible to accept electronic and card payments, not in person, but also in line and online and over the phone. And as a result, today we have over 430,000 small businesses that reach customers and are processing billions of dollars in transactions through the solution. And of course, we all know that once an SME is enabled in this manner, they can just as easily make a sale to and receive payments from a consumer in Iowa or Ottawa or India. And I think it was Max that really pointed, or maybe it was Wei Shin that pointed out how payments, in a way, are easy. Like once you have that is there's no geographic restriction, and we know that really expanding SME's customer base beyond their local market is one key way to survive and thrive through these challenging times. I just wanted to mention one of our SME partners in particular that has benefited from Authorize.net, because they've been working with Authorize.net for over 20 years, back in the earliest days of e-commerce. This is a company called Prism Kites, which is a Washington State-based kite maker and seller. And by using Visa and Authorize.net to help make payments simple, Prism Kites was really able to focus on delivering their superior products and services through an online presence and reaching consumers across the U.S. and overseas, and expanding their offerings to include spare parts and other accessories that aren't easily accessible in store. And we know that participating in global e-commerce can seem daunting for a small business like Prism Kites. But what we're committed to, and through our small business products and solutions, we're really hoping to make payments simple, so that business owners can really focus on what matters most and what they do best, which is making the sale, and not worrying about whether or not they're going to be able to get paid in full and on time for that sale. So thank you again for this opportunity, and it's a real privilege to be here with these great partners.
Great, thanks very much, Arun. I was going to stay with financial services and go with turn to Eric Rettig from Intuit. Eric, could you jump in and any reaction that you'd like to give?
Sure. Well, thank you again, Jake and Global Innovation Forum and Jamaica, for hosting this important dialogue today. I know a lot of the entrepreneurs on the line were in their offices. I'm in my makeshift office, which is also a nursery. So welcome from my nursery. But I think as I mentioned and Arun mentioned, this is a just super important dialogue to have. We're in this really, and I should say I'm with Intuit. I handle global policy and regulatory affairs. And we are the makers of QuickBooks, TurboTax, and Mint. And we have about 7 million small business customers around the world. So as I was mentioning, we have this really unique moment for SMEs everywhere. As Arun mentioned, small businesses around the world are really struggling to stay solvent in this rapidly changing environment. And COVID concerns still drive changing customer expectations really at a record pace. And so to start, I think it's useful to take a look at that narrative and look at the numbers behind it. So, for example, 87% of small businesses that will open in the next 12 months will be online primarily, or a combination of online or offline. And about 28% of businesses are selling more products and services online this year. And 94% of that group say that contravirus or COVID-19 has influenced this change. So that's just like eye-opening to me. As of February 2019, 50% of product-based businesses sold in only one channel, right? So either a physical store or say like an online channel due to the complexity of managing multiple channels. So we did a recent survey of QuickBooks customers, and 76% of those folks said they would love to have this one-stop shop from which they could manage everything related to their business finances. 84% of product-based businesses selling in multiple channels still reconcile inventory using pen and paper or spreadsheets, right? Or they keep receipts in shoeboxes, the common story we hear all the time. So at Intuit, we're creating these new tools to help SMEs achieve these goals, including an exciting tool which actually just launched today, so I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it, which is QuickBooks Commerce. So check that out. And I think it was Wei Shin that mentioned it's really tough straddling the online sales and in-person retail world. So to thrive as product-based businesses, small businesses must support how their customers want to shop in real time. So think of like in-store, online, Facebook, Amazon, etc. So for most small businesses, keeping track of multiple channels is really overwhelming, right? And hard to manage. Another stat I'll share with you: before COVID-19, about half of product-based businesses sold only in one channel, either again through a physical store or online channel. And because it's just so complex. So to enable SMEs to make these shifts in digital tools, they also really need to maintain cash flow, which means access to affordable financing, right? And so I want to applaud especially our colleagues from the SBA on the call today for their work standing up the Paycheck Protection Program in the state, or PPP, where they facilitated, I think it was about 4 years worth of loans in just 4 weeks. Intuit was actually one of the 21 fintechs to participate in PPP. And, I really believe it's a success story in a way that highlights the positive outcomes of partnership between industry and government. For our part, we facilitated about over 1 billion in loans to small businesses in all 50 states. That went to over 33,000 SMEs, which kept about 250,000 folks on payroll. And the average loan size was about $33,000. And 98% of those loans went to firms with, under 10 or fewer employees, so the small. So to finish, governments around the world, I think, should consider policies which allow for this sort of public-private collaboration, but more importantly, ensure there are policy frameworks in place which allow SMEs to seamlessly conduct business, as again Arun mentioned, and many of our entrepreneurs did as well, around the world, and which reflect the gigantic acceleration of digital commerce over the past 8 months. So I'll finish there, but just really appreciate the dialogue today.
Great, thanks, Eric. And that's a good segue to Maria Luisa from UPS, given everything that they get to their destination on time. So Maria Luisa, could you talk maybe a little bit about the physical side of e-commerce and amid the pandemic?
Of course, and first of all, thank you, Jake and Jamaica, for the invitation. It's really an honor to be here, and I want to echo my colleagues at this panel message that it was amazing to listen to the small businesses. It fills you with energy, and may the force be with them and continue conquering their own businesses. I think for UPS perspective, maybe to put a little bit of framework, just some statistics that really show that the challenges and the opportunities and or maybe not opportunities, but how businesses pivot to be able to make it an opportunity out of the challenges that we're facing for the pandemic. We saw double-digit growth, almost a triple-digit growth in e-commerce in a year difference from last year. In the United States, for example, in the month of May, according to a study from Adobe, there was a 77% increase on e-commerce compared to May last year. And that growth, we were expecting it to be maybe to happen in 5 or 10 years. And so to put it into perspective, this was a huge growth. The other thing that we started doing as a company is that we started to do bi-weekly surveys with our small business customers to get an understanding of what were they facing and challenging. And the number one concern, of course, was first cash flow. The second one, and I think to what my colleagues have mentioned from Visa and Intuit, is that the change of the customer behavior was big, and I think our small business, Max, Chin, and Emma mentioned it, was big. And all of a sudden, we realized, and I'll get to the logistics part of it, that many small businesses in this survey that we were seeing, even though they might have a digital presence, many of them were not ready to do business fully, only digitally, directly to consumers. Many of them were selling from business to business. And then they were selling some to consumers, but not as much. And so that was the second finding on the survey. The third one was that many small businesses relied in only one source of suppliers for their supply chain, and that was disrupted. And so they were not ready for that shift and that change. And the last one that is important to mention too was their concern about how to manage their employees and their labor, because they were all used to being in person, and then now they were all going back home. So from this statistics, what we started to see was definitely that the small businesses needed to change and shift to be able to adapt to the changes that were happening around them. And now if we go into the digital trade ecosystem, if you think about it, from a seller to a buyer, you need e-retailers, you need e-payments, and you need delivery services. And if you think of it as a circle, each one of those elements play an important role. And if for small businesses, they all had to shift very much about how do they handle being fully digital. I think it was Wei Xin that was mentioning managing the inventory, because now that we're going directly to consumer and the demand started to come in. And if we think of the e-retailer, e-payments, and services, how do they manage all that shift and change? And so we started seeing a big shift from the small businesses to be able to catch up and invest and be able to compete. And so as they were implementing these changes, what we have seen from a logistics perspective, there was that need, that trust of small businesses needed to have on the payment back and forth. And I think that is mentioned by Arun, very much to have that trust. And how do we able to connect for the small business to have that payment? And why am I a logistic company talking about that? Because that impacts the movement of the good. And so from a logistics perspective, we really started to see the need to be able to train our small businesses on how to make certain that they're thinking of the full circle of ecosystem as they're thinking about payments. They also have to think about refunds or returns if they're going to return the goods. And that was another challenge that we saw from the small businesses. Now, the other element of this that became very apparent for us as we were looking at the logistics and the volumes that were shifting and changing, we saw volumes from business to consumer shift dramatically. In the month of April, we barely had any business to business. It was more business to consumer directly. And that change dramatically changed and shifted the volumes that were needed. For the seller and for the buyer, they needed to have that communication, that piece, and that's where technology and digital trade make a big difference. And we saw where consumers became more savvy in terms of how do they look at the products and what they were looking at. And so the training that we were giving to the small businesses is to really connect on what were those digital tools that they had to communicate with the consumers, with their customers, and how the businesses were able to handle that area. Consumers also requires always reliability and be able to track and trace what they ordered. And so for us, from our company perspective, that became important. And that really turned into what policies we were seeing, what were the obstacles that were converting into challenges. So if you come up, Jake, that means that I went over my time. So I'll turn it over to you. We'll continue later the conversation.
Okay, that sounds good. I wasn't trying to cut you off, but it's thank you very much, Maria Luisa, and thanks to Arun and Eric as well.